I was just pretending we were going to have technical problems again then and get you all worried. Massive welcome to what is take 2 here on InfoSec Live of confidential communications with William Taaffe. And as I said, for anyone who joined last time, massive apologies for the tech issues, but we are back to pose some interesting questions and opinions on methods of communication, security considerations, which we probably haven't even thought of, whether we're guilty of using one tool for everything, the deepfake threat, and much, much more. For those that don't know me, my name's Simon Linstead. I'm the founder of the InfoSec Live community and also your host for this show today. But before we bring William on, by sharing stories and best practice over the last few months, it's led to over 50,000 views and 8,000 hours of our content being watched on YouTube by you, our amazing subscribers. So a huge thank you for the engagement. And if you'd like to take it a step further and support the wider InfoSec Live community, or indeed buy me a cheeky decaf coffee, we do have a few ways that you can show your appreciation. Just got to watch and put this down because I've spilt this doing this before. First up, the ability to purchase super stickers in the YouTube chat if you want to get your question bumped up to the top, and 3 tiers of membership allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with our content is what really matters. So if you're watching this live, please do like and subscribe. We want to make these interactive, so also make sure you drop any questions in the chat. It is you, our audience, who make these events so special. I'll stop rambling now. Very excited. William's a good friend of mine. Let's bring him on. Did I have you go in there for a minute?
You did. You did.
Sorry.
I thought maybe repeat performance.
I think we're all good. Just a quick hello to everyone in the chat. We've got Nelson, Jed, Richard, Splodge. There's a few people in there. Thanks ever so much for tuning in. I can guarantee you this will be engaging and insightful because William is a very charismatic and interesting young man. So William,
guarantees, Simon.
Yeah, of course. William, just tell everyone a bit about yourself for those that don't know you.
Thank you. First of all, Simon, I'm glad that you put the coffee down away from the technology. I've got previous.
I had a very close call.
I've got previous for dropping a full cup of coffee right over my laptop, in which I learned the lesson that electronics and coffee do not mix, and that was a painful mistake to make. So
was it a company laptop or was it yours?
It was actually mine, which makes it miles worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. We shouldn't say that.
I've broken a lot of company tech too, though. So yeah, I shouldn't admit that, should I?
It's all right. You work for yourself now. It's fine. So that leads us on to.
That's a great lead-in to lockdown cybersecurity.
Come on, tell us about it.
Which I founded a few years ago with my business partner and co-founder Karen Morrill, who might be watching today. So hey, Karen, what's up?
Hi, Karen.
And we really went into lockdown with a view that actually from a position for cybersecurity, generally it was very technically and technical heavy. And what we thought was missing was a gap there to give cybersecurity information in business language in a way that was digestible to business people for them to understand. And actually it was born out of a key thing really, which is that my business partner, she's a CFO. She used to assign spend budgets within the role of finance. If nobody is aware that you have overarching responsibility of risk within an organization. So you're in charge of aligning budgets and spend and what you should purchase and how you should do and what the strategy is. And I said to her at the time, you assigned the spend to it. Did you know what you were spending on? And she said, not really. And I thought, well, there's a huge gap then, isn't there? That actually it's this siloed nature of what IT and IT security is. And
I think again, the skills she brings with her from being able to speak the language of CFOs and people in the C-suite is one of the biggest areas that we see there's a bit of a gap for in the market. Lots of technical knowledge. Sometimes people struggle to get that across to people who aren't that technical.
How do you translate it exactly? So, we work with the ICAEW, another plug. We do membership training for them. So training that we do in a classroom setting. We did one last week. So if anyone's watching, thank you for participating in that. And I suppose the ethos of the business is to try and technology IT teams. You're giving me heart palpitations.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you.
I'm not winding you up. I can't hear you now.
Every time you disappear, Simon, I get heart palpitations. But I can hear you.
You keep talking, William. I'll sort this out. This is like not meant to be, is it?
No problems. Well, listen, we'll go on.
I've got it. We're back. We're back. We're back.
So Simon, you're somebody who really likes technology that's older technology, and
well, there's a reason for that, because I clearly can't work the new technology, can
I? I wanted to pick your brains a little bit because I just think it's an area we both enjoy, looking at older tech. So when you think about communicating in life and in business, and you predate me a little bit,
a lot of it,
a little bit with technology, what was your first kind of experience of working in an office and how you would communicate with people, and what would you do if you were outside the office trying to communicate?
I think for me, and this is showing my age, I had a pager. So for anyone who doesn't know what a pager is or was, it was not just for doctors and medical staff. It was a device about this big that clipped on your belt that paged you a telephone number to call when someone wanted to get hold of you. And that was my first method before I got a big old Motorola brick telephone to communicate outside of the office. But I think if we're talking technology in the office, it would have been, apart from the systems at Norwich Union I used years ago, which were kind of green on black, very, very old systems, it would probably be Lotus Notes is what we used at Sun Life Financial of Canada back in the day. Yeah.
Well, do you know what? First of all, pagers. I absolutely loved my pager. I got it at age 13 because I couldn't. My mum wouldn't let me have a mobile phone. So that was basically what happened. I got a pager, and I remember feeling so adult sitting in science class and getting the news delivered.
Sorry, I've got a really important call. Gonna have to step out.
Do you know what? Because you said it was just the number, but actually it was a little bit more, right? So what it was the precursor for receiving news in a mobile way, because you used to get news alerts that come through. And I had no interest in the news before I got a pager. As soon as I got the pager, I'd tell everyone next to me, like, have you seen what's happening on BBC?
I think, William, the pager you had was 10 years newer than the one I had.
It was a little bit more advanced, maybe. But basically, what you would have to do for anyone listening is that you could send a message that was bespoke. And so I would actually make a call to an operator, and I would say, this is Simon's pager number. Can you please send him this message? And that was how that went through. So actually, the ways that we communicated, at least, when I started before work, so going through school, was that mobile phones weren't really widespread. They weren't.
Well, no, there weren't mobile phones when I was at school. It was phone box.
Phone box, right?
You'd have phone box if a mate wants to come out to play.
Yeah, you'd keep a spare 10p, and if you were absolutely broke, you'd do a reverse charge call, and the operator would say, "Will you accept the charge?" And he'd say, "No."
And some nefarious, unscrupulous youths used to put broken matchsticks in the coin reject jar so that it collects all the coins. Someone told me that once.
Cyber fraud. Nicely brought round. So, I mean, actually, when we think about technology and this is why I'm bringing the point, right? We had this slow phase of technology where we started to progress. We started to have pagers. We started to have mobile phones. We used to send SMS text messages. Do you remember the days before predictive text? How long that took just to type out a message?
But you could take a break and play Snake.
You could take a underrated Snake, yeah. So all of these modes were coming out, and we were discovering new ways to contact people and to communicate. But it was clunky, and it was slow, and it didn't always work, and it was expensive. And I think what's happened, at least certainly since the pandemic, it's exploded. So let's reposition it, right? On a day-to-day basis, tell me some of the tools that you use to communicate with people.
I live in the country, so smoke signals. I mean, it's the same as everyone now, isn't it? I've got an iPhone.
Yeah.
I've got an iPad just in case I can't get away from the phone, and just in case that doesn't work, I've then got a watch on my wrist that helps me communicate, a laptop, and a kind of workstation as well for use for communication.
And on your smartphone, are you just using SMS messages?
Oh, of course, the only thing I can use. Can't you see that? It's a great point. I've got, my goodness me, where do I start? Right. So I've got an assistant helping me out at the moment, and they're based in the Philippines. So we communicate via Slack.
Yeah.
I use Microsoft Teams for meetings, which is a bit of a bugbear because a lot of people have problems with it, but I won't stop moaning about that today. You've then got so many different things. I don't use WhatsApp. You and I communicate on Signal.
Yeah.
because it's meant to be private and secure, and we have some random conversations. Yeah, but so no, lots of different things: telephone, email, Zoom calls. It's just never ending, isn't it?
It is, mate. It is. There's a plethora of different apps. Then you've got things like Discord, 4 and 8chan, Telegram, which we forgot about there. Telegram app as well. It's huge, right? And then you've got Slack, and you've got your business focused tools. And then this is why really this concept of unified comms came in, because actually we realized that when we when we're talking about things, Simon, what are we creating? We're creating data, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right? So when we're creating data, then where is so actually we've got a real open trust position around data that we've just got.
Well, I'll tell you what we've got is we've got a stupidly naive position of trust around data. It's a whole other conversation, isn't it? But anything we get for free isn't free. It's because someone's harvesting your data and selling it on to someone else. And I'm a big advocate for, at some point, we get some control back over that as to what can actually happen to our data.
That's right, Simon.
Different subject though, so I'll stop off on a tangent.
Good time to mention to join in with InfoSec Live, the free community.
Yeah, and another way to send instant messages and connect with your peers. Yeah.
But it's difficult to stay on top of it, right? And then you've also got the fact that within organizations, especially if the administration controls are not that tight, people will install their own software and they'll install their own things. And we're entering into a world now. I mean, my LinkedIn feed is literally full of ChatGPT and OpenAI, which is massively interesting, but it is just, there's so much of it, right? It's like everybody's jumping into it. And again, like one of the big things that we have, and I say this a lot with risk, and when I talk about risk, is that the majority of businesses, when you go and talk to them, are really, really interested and excited by innovation. Innovation is really, really exciting. So if I say to you that this new messaging platform will enable your staff to collaborate in a way that they've never done before, it will add intelligence to it, it will be able to take that data and transform it and load it automatically into other systems, you'll be able to be more efficient, more streamlined, cost savings, bring in new customers, customer success. And we fixate on those things, but what we don't think is actually, is there a risk position here with this tool as well? And are we considering where it could go wrong if it does go wrong? And I think that's never really part of the argument until it happens. And so what we see all too often, at least with lockdown, is that companies really, really prioritize innovation and they don't consider risk until they have an incident, and then they prioritize risk and they don't consider innovation. And so you're one extreme or the other, when actually a real sensible position is to be in the middle of both of them.
Yeah, 100%. Sorry, I was trying to do two things at once then. I was reading and trying to listen to you.
No chance.
I think you're right. I mean, you gave me some stats earlier, and we're definitely guilty of using that one tool approach for everything. Yeah. I think I can't remember what the Zoom figures were, but I think you said Microsoft Teams has got 280 million users.
Yeah. So question for the audience here. I suppose I can't really ask a question, but which is the most popular video conferencing tool? And I would have undoubtedly said Teams, and then I learned actually it's Zoom. Zoom has more users on a daily basis than Microsoft Teams.
Is that because they give a free version away?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's probably what it comes down to. Somebody said to me recently, well, Microsoft Teams is free, and I thought, oh, my 365 licenses.
But then this is back to your comment about people's idea of what is safe and whether they've actually got any care about their data at all. And without wanting to do a plug, because I haven't got commission rights on this book, but I'm listening to a book at the moment. I highly recommend it. By Mark Ellsberg, called Zero. It's about exactly that, about your data. Anyway, go on, carry on, William.
It's a really interesting one, Si. So here's the thing, right? With if you combine Teams and Zoom on a daily basis, they have around about 580 million users. 580 million users every day are using Teams and Zoom combined, right? And then when you look at the world's population as a percentage of that, that's 7.4% of the world's population every day use Teams and Zoom, which is
people should get out, shouldn't they?
They should. But it comes back to the purpose of what these tools are for and what they were developed for. And so when I say that to you, and when you look at these platforms as they are in their current form, what do you think were the big drivers behind the creation of it?
It's data gathering and convenience, isn't it? I mean, data gathering from the companies who are deploying the products, and obviously money, financial, and then for the people using them, I mean, it's all about line of least resistance in our society, isn't it? Give me the easiest option to do everything.
Exactly, completely. Couldn't have said it better, Simon.
That's good.
So that's the thing, right? It's convenience, right? Is a huge driver, and speed to market. Convenience and speed to market, and then security is often an afterthought, right? Yeah. We talk about security by design principles, but in reality, the big drivers to market are speed to market and convenience, and security is thought of something that you can bolt on after. And when I think of Teams and Zoom, I don't think that these are inherently insecure platforms. I just think they have huge user bases. And the reason for that is because they're marketed in that way, because what Microsoft want is everyone using it, right? And Teams and Zoom wants everybody using it, those platforms. And so actually, we're creating a scenario here where what we're basically being told to do is, well, you can use this tool in your home life, and you can use it in your work life, and you can use it in everything in between. And when you think about everything else in life, right, when you go onto a construction site, you don't wear trainers, do you? Because if something falls on your foot and breaks it, that's a hazard, right? So you wear something a bit purpose-built for that environment. But in a business environment, which is a bit of a strange one for me, and I think actually we've been forced along. The pandemic has created this digital transformation urge, right? And all these businesses have suddenly been taken into a situation where they need to remain operational. And how do you do that? Well, video conferencing is the solution to enable us all to still connect, right? And so we haven't necessarily distinguished, are we actually using something which is for the mass market, for very, very specific business purposes? And actually, is it safe, or is it the best platform in which to do that? Does that the right idea? And when I say that, a lot of people kind of resonate and go, oh, actually, you got a point with that one.
My big concern, just to sort of build on that, is with ChatGPT's launch and Bard and all the other ones, and Elon Musk is now going to bring one out as well. You know where that's heading. That's going to be integrated with every single thing that we've got. And I think it will be no different with Teams and Zoom, you know, and with the security concerns around that in itself are enough to give you sleepless nights, surely, when it comes to data and privacy information.
They're still trying to work it out, aren't they? And I've seen data breaches in the last few days, you know, based off of AI tools where it's not quite so tight. But there's such an urge from the public to get into that kind of technology to see what's possible. And actually, I think it's magnificent technology. When you look at it in one view, in innovation, it's fantastic, and in risk, it poses enormous problems in terms of what can be done in fraud, cyber fraud, as individuals and to corporate entities.
So what about I don't know, let's use, what sort of firm would be prevalent for this? Probably a legal firm with confidential communications. I know for a fact of at least one who I've dealt with who communicates via Teams, client meetings, etc.
Yeah.
Is it encrypted? Is there any safety to that? Should people worry?
Yeah, I'll tackle two bits to that if I can do, Simon.
Please.
So the first bit around it is, what is confidential information that we should be securing, right? And so the start point for me was really 2018 with GDPR. And one of the exercises that we conducted as an MSP that we were doing was going around and reviewing data protection policies, reviewing infrastructure. And part of that process right at the start was something called data classification. And it was actually an exercise which many of these businesses had never done before. Right. And so it was a little bit onerous on them. But what we actually asked them to do was have a look at all of your data and start to categorize it in terms of severity. What is information that's more or less in the public domain, that's of low sensitivity, low value, right? And then what's in this company that's we've either got legislation around or regulations to protect, so personally identifiable information. So, you know, that could be anything. If you're starting in a business, you have to provide proof of identity, right? Your references. You might have to provide your driving license because they might be providing you with a company car. You might have to give them a copy of your passport. All of this is really, really sensitive information because we understand that identity fraud is really common, and that is the mechanism to help do that, right? So first of all, this data classification exercise is a really good start point for identifying sensitive information. And in the business context, what we tend to see is HR and disciplinary. So anything that involves your own staff is obviously really damaging. That's damaging internally from a culture perspective if that gets breached, right? And we've seen that through breaches over the last few years. But then we've also got information like mergers and acquisitions, right? So buying companies, purchasing them. And Simon, you've gone through this exercise. You know the kind of confidentiality that you're privy to within that. If it's a public listed company, right? So if it's listed on the stock market, then that information, if it gets leaked, can have implications. Yeah, huge implications on stock price and value, right? So anything that deems in that area should be secured in a more effective way. But then we've also got all different types of information around intellectual property. And one of the big things that we've heard a lot about in the last few years, especially with thinking about state-sponsored groups, is theft of intellectual property. And actually there's some examples of that. Did you see NVIDIA last year, and also Electronic Arts?
I did. My concern is identity theft, as in AI identity theft, where people start to use your voice, your face,
Well, that's the other thing, right? So if you actually look at, I'm a massive fan of them, and I'll just see if I get the name right. 11 Labs. I think they're called 11 Labs, 11 AI, 11 Labs AI. That's a voice cloning software. It's absolutely incredible, right? And for $22 a month, that will give you access to create an audio track. Now, the audio track, you can then lip sync to somebody else. So you can sound like me, right? And we can play that in a deep fake way.
We should have done that for today, shouldn't we?
That would be so awesome, right? So all you need, so if anyone's wondering what you need to be able to do to create a voice audio track, is all you need to do is have 10 minutes of uninterrupted audio. That's it.
Do you know? So all you got to do is, so let me give you this. This is a brilliant example. So my wife had a dormant account with a major high street bank in the UK. She was going through some paperwork the other day. She hadn't accessed it for 5 years. So she had to jump through a couple of hoops on the telephone. But guess what they made her do to set up security?
My voice is my password.
Yeah. And I said to her, she was doing it. That's pointless. That's pointless.
What's really frightening is that we're at the infancy of this technology. And there's a great video, you can find it on YouTube, anyone watching. It's 11 Labs, and it's of Leonardo DiCaprio giving his talk to the UN. But instead of Leonardo DiCaprio doing it, they've actually used AI bots to create voices of 5 celebrities that they've used their voices and cloned their voices over the top of Leo. And you cannot tell the syntax, the tone of voice, you're losing that robotic quality that you used to be able to pick out when you thought that sounds a little bit odd. And I think
11 Labs.
11 Labs, yeah. So you can have a look at them. They've got videos on YouTube that will demonstrate deepfake. And there's a bunch of other content if you're looking for deepfake examples through YouTube. And what I'm seeing in the last 6 months is that the quality is improving on these. And that's really frightening when you consider a lot of these apps that are deepfake apps are actually on your mobile phone, right? So these are not highly commercialized models and platforms yet, but they will be. And so the risk, actually, I think it poses a massive risk, right? Because thinking about things like business email compromise, for example, right, where you get an email from someone, and this is more common with cloud, which goes back into, if you take somebody's Microsoft account and you can access their email, you can access their Teams, you can slip in to a conversation, right? Now, even if you haven't managed to do the deepfake bit to perfect the video bit, you can still get into the chat, turn your camera off, and use the voice to be able to convince the people.
That also leads us to talk about data sovereignty and who actually owns and looks after the data that we're sharing all over these apps as well, doesn't it?
It does. And I think these are such big things, because depending on the jurisdiction of where it's created from, yes, they might have a responsibility for housing data within your territory. But what if they're asked by their government to provide that data? right? What if they have an obligation provided by their government and that state? And this is a big problem that we've seen recently with TikTok in the news, and you know, the guidance to anybody working in Westminster to not have TikTok.
Well, I mean, it's a great, without wanting to moan at anyone who works in the civil service, talk about shutting the gate after the horse is bolted. Why has anyone who works for the government got TikTok on their phone anyway?
Yeah, it does make you wonder. And I love your point about 2 years too late, right?
Yeah.
And we're often like that. We did the same thing with Internet of Things. We put new standards in, the MUD standards around the build of an Internet of Things device. Superb, but 2 years too late.
Yeah, everyone's already got those cameras in the house.
Yeah, it's pirated already.
It is.
And so you make really good points around how secure is the platform? Are we using it for purpose built? And so what I always say is Teams and Zoom, and I see some people hating on Teams in the chat, right? But I use these platforms on a daily basis, and they're really good for us in a business way. But when we've identified a specific conversation, if we're having a conversation with an investor, if we're talking about cyber posture because we've done an assessment and a maturity review, and we're trying to unpick, actually, this is where we're vulnerable, and this is where we need to improve, and this is our roadmap for improvement. Well, if that data gets leaked, you've essentially got a roadmap for how to attack a business. And so I think we're not necessarily thinking, this level of conversation that we're having is really, really sensitive, right? It could be really, really bad if this data got out. Are we making 100% sure we are secure in that? And in that way, how can we know, right? How can we know for sure that that data has been secured, that only the people in a room is doing that? And one of the topics that you put on this is blockchain, the future, right? And blockchain is still confusing to a lot of people, not least myself in some degree, right? And I have an understanding that goes here, and then all of a sudden you go to there and you lose me with it. But essentially what a blockchain can do is validate. It's a validation tool. It can be audited to prove certain points in time of what happened. And so from a perspective of video conferencing, the only way that you can prove immutability of data is by using a blockchain process to validate that. And so I think that's a really important part. And people might say, well, why would you need to validate that? And the reason is because of legals, Simon. Because actually, if the data gets out, what happens? Class action. I mean,
we've already seen it with criminal cases where video evidence hasn't been accepted due to the ability of deep fakes. I mean, again, it's no different to fraudulent type cases either, is it?
And this is really where we're heading, right? And so, like, if anyone is in the UK, on the BBC, they had a program called The Capture, was around video manipulation and how you could doctor video content to suit your means. And actually, this is bringing, I think it's really relevant, and it's the start of this process where actually in the future, we can't just trust the video that we're watching is genuine and is authentic. And so the blockchain is that mechanism in its architecture to be able to prove that immutability. So in a business context and not in a social context, because in a social context, it's fine for me to use Zoom if I'm talking to my mum, right? But if I'm having a really, really important conversation where actually that data, I need to make sure it's not leaked. It would be catastrophic for our business if it did so. It's our client's data. Let's make sure that we're actually thinking about that in the right way, and we're not just trusting in one tool because convenience.
So I'm hoping after all this talk about the existing tools, what we need to worry about, the opportunities in the market, the threats in the market, I'm hoping you might have a solution that can fix this, William.
Well, do you know what? I'll pull one out of my hat, Simon.
Uncanny.
And so, you know, this was the basis, but actually it's a passionate subject for me anyway, because I like to see things in areas where I think actually that's a risk. We're running a risk with that, especially in large corporates as well, who are housing so much data and ridiculous quantities and volumes of it. And so the solution that we're pushing is called NearConnexus. And
can you show us it?
Yeah, I can do. So if anybody wants to see it, please.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a look myself. So never mind what they say. Bring it up.
Yeah, absolutely. You can. Well, I'll tell you what. We won't do it for the purpose of this, but if anyone is interested in seeing a demo of it or seeing some information around it, please do reach out to either Simon or myself. And Simon, if you want to pop my
put your LinkedIn
email, if you want to pop my LinkedIn or email into the conversation, I'd be delighted to show it. And actually, where it came from was this thing of remote working, right? That actually within the police force, how were they going to conduct interview processes if they couldn't travel because of travel restrictions during the pandemic? And that's where the technology was born from. But it wasn't long before corporate in the private sector world started to look at it and say, actually, for certain functions here, for if we need to evidence something, if we're doing an HR disciplinary process, if it actually could be litigious at some point, if we want to record it and review it for our own purposes, or even if we just want to guarantee that it is completely secure, because we don't want to be the company responsible for having this data breach if it did get out. And that was what it was really born from. So it's called NearConnexus. It's a fantastic program. It has lots of unique functionality within it outside of what you see within your traditional tools, but it's been purpose built. And I think that's the key phrase. It's been purpose built for two things. The first thing is to provide evidence, and it can be used for evidence that cannot be challenged in court, because you brought that up previously, Simon. And the second element is making sure it's completely secure. And you know that it's been built with security at the forefront of it and not convenience through the development process.
So are you saying it's a replacement for existing video conferencing software, or is it?
No, I think this sits alongside it, right? The existing software and the existing platforms are great, and they're convenient and they're easy to access, right? But we should be thinking with that data classification mindset, actually, where should we use Teams? Where should we use Zoom? Where is it acceptable to use it? And actually, if we're going to conduct remote processes, and especially if we're talking to people globally, which we seem to be doing more and more these days, we're becoming a more global connected world. Let's make sure those really sensitive conversations we've identified and we're using the right platform to conduct those with them.
Okay, then. So coming from the point of view of a man standing here who, through self-destruction, lost everything and went bankrupt a few years ago, all of a sudden price becomes quite important, right? Yeah. How do you price that service? How does it work for people who want to engage with it?
Yeah, so the pricing model is actually quite kind, right? Because what a lot of people do is do a per seat license, and that's the most common model these days on a retainer type basis. What NearConnexus actually does is give an organizational key. So everybody in the organization can use it, and it's a low license cost. So to provide a low annual license, it's a low license cost. And then it actually works on consumption. So it works on minutes. And that's why it's really important looking at things like data classification to determine what data is really valuable and how you should house it. So in that way, it's not a replacement, Simon, for the existing, but it's a very affordable, cost-effective tool that you can use and guarantee. And if you ever have a situation where anything does go legal, Simon, you know the kind of cost that can incur. Having the ability to be able to provide evidence in a way that can be unchallenged, actually, when you look at it from an ROI perspective, can be a huge saver.
So who's the key targets for this? What's the customer profile look like? I mean, I mentioned lawyers and solicitors earlier, but let's elaborate on that. Who else could this be used for?
Yeah, so we're actually getting a lot of success within various fraud and criminality teams. Anyone that does investigation processes and uses investigations either internally or externally. Anything around public sector and data which is of high importance and high confidentiality, anything around critical national infrastructure type services. We're also seeing it being used within Zurich Insurance, are using it as a group. So they're using it around their claims processes currently.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So there is, but outside of that, I think there's real application within any kind of large business environment, or in a small business environment, if you're conducting things around intellectual property. And intellectual property can be such a good idea for
even management and leadership meetings, I could argue.
Well, yeah, I mean, do you ever leave a boardroom door open?
No, you
don't. But why do we do it with video, right? Yeah. So it goes back.
You set that one up, didn't you? You've been planning
that. But this is the way that we need to think, actually. That look, we're used to doing things in certain ways, and cost and budget, especially at the moment, is really, really important. But we also have to balance that with risk. And if we're doing things that are creating inherent value around intellectual property, and we want to make sure that that remains in our business, that it isn't leaked, that somebody else doesn't take that information and go and do it somewhere else, well, what's that worth? And it's definitely worth a lot more than what the cost of keeping it secure is. So that's the way I see it.
And how do you think we can change the mindset of businesses to take it more seriously with the marketing and the PR? I think have teams recently said that they've got some form of encryption on their service. Just to play devil's advocate here a little bit.
It's a really good question, Simon. Thank you for throwing that curveball at me.
Right.
So here's the thing with Teams, right? They have announced the new version of Teams that uses OpenAI and has some pretty cool functionality with it, right? So one of the cool things that I do like is the ability to auto translate, right? It does translation services, which I think is really cool. But here's the downside. The moment you go into an end-to-end encrypted environment in Teams, you lose all your functionality. So you can no longer have live captions. You no longer have the translation for functionality. You can no longer transcript. You can't use the messaging app anymore. You can't use the chat function within Teams. So
what can you use? Just a video call then?
It's just a video, and it's an unrecorded video. You can't record the content either. So yes, they're thinking.
So it's just for criminals then, or?
Yeah, well, you know, and I suppose comes back to the meaning though of what was it developed for. Fundamentally, what was it built for? And I think that probably answers the question of why that functionality is blocked the moment you move it into a more secure area. So
what can you do with your solution?
Well, the great thing about NearConnexus is that it's been built for security and for evidence, but it's been built with full functionality to work in all of those things. So full transcript available, live captions available. You've got a bookmarking function that you can bookmark certain points in time with, and you've got an external blockchain validator. You've also got the ability, which I think you'd probably like, Simon, of having a silent observer in the room. So you can have somebody.
Come on, hold on. What made you think I'd like that? First of all,
because I don't know. I just thought it would just work with your cycle.
Well, it would, but why do you think that?
Your voyeuristic tendencies, mate. But that's what it does. It allows somebody to watch in. And so the ways that we've seen that is in training, actually, where people are saying, look, we've hired people, we want them to have autonomy to conduct this process, but it would be really good to provide some layer of visibility on that as well. How can we do that in a way that doesn't change the dynamic of the conversation? And so that was what that function was born for, really. So yes, there's a lot of functionality that still works once you go into that encrypted environment, and that's definitely of benefit in a number of different ways, sector specific.
Do you mind if well, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to drop Lockdown Cybersecurity's website in the comments.
Thank you. Be a friend of Lockdown. If you see us on LinkedIn, please follow the page. That would be great.
Let me get that up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Thank you.
So we've got a couple of minutes left. Anything you want to add to what we've talked about?
No, I think we've covered the most part. I think just to summarize, looking at the future, there's some really cool technology coming. We're on the cusp of technology, of a new revolution of technology, not just in the form of AI, but also in the form of self-driving vehicles, of smart cities, of this idea of hyperconnectivity. Within that, we're going to create even more data, and we're going to create data of such huge value, both personal and from a business perspective. And we're also seeing it become easier to trick people and convince them that you are the person they think you're speaking to. Right? That was difficult a few years ago. That because of the advent of technology and the changes within that, that's going to become more prolific.
Although I think Vladimir Putin's doing quite well at that, isn't he? Should I have said that and got political on here? I'm not sure.
There's political.
Talk about doppelgangers out there at the moment, isn't there? We can't all afford to pay people to have plastic surgery to look like us, though, William, can we?
That's true. That's true, Simon. So I think it's just, you know, eye-opening, right? Let's have a think. If you're in a business, if you're dealing with information that's really secure, and this doesn't have to be video, right? It could be emails, it could be email encryption, it could be just encryption, it could be using purpose-built tools for certain functions. And so I suppose the message for people that are watching is try to have an open mind and have that risk position ingrained into yourself. Yes, it's great for convenience. Yes, it's innovative and it's aided the business. But actually, have we opened a door into our networks, into our environments where we've opened vulnerabilities? And how do we monitor, manage, and maintain that? And how do we change the culture in our organizations as well? And that really comes back to cyber. It's not as much just communications. How do we begin to take cyber away from just being an IT thing and being an organizational issue where everyone...
We need to change it from operational security to strategic security. And the only way that's going to happen is by having more people like Karen in the industry, to use her as an example, who can actually speak the lingo, to use someone else's phrase, of the C-suite and people, and actually speak in asset terms that they understand, and all the different risk terminology that kind of makes sense in cybersecurity, but it's got different meanings in the finance world. I think, again, someone said on the stream, it was Edo yesterday, why are we measuring security budgets as a percentage of spend on IT budgets?
Yeah.
There's your biggest problem to start with, because it shouldn't be looked at as a section of the IT budget. We could talk about this for hours, and I'm not an expert, so I'd rely on you to speak for half an hour, William. So
you might get 15 minutes out of me, Si.
Yeah, as always, it's been super entertaining and super informative. I just want to say quickly, thank you very much for coming in and sharing that. I'm looking forward to seeing a demo of the platform as well. Maybe you'll give me one when I'm back.
Absolutely.
Back from next week, which leads me seamlessly into, if anyone's watching from Tampa Bay, we've got the first United States InfoSec Live leadership event next Thursday at the East Lake Woodlands Golf Club in Tampa Bay. We've already got, let me just check numbers. As of now, 62 leaders registered for a live panel debate on the national cybersecurity strategy and recent SEC guidelines. It is an invite-only event, but if you're interested in coming, please do drop me a direct message. We've got a couple of spaces left. And for anyone who's not in Tampa, don't worry. We're coming to Manchester on the 4th of May. We're in San Francisco on April the 25th. We are in London on the 21st of June for InfoSec Europe. Back in Washington, D.C. on the 7th for another event, before coming back to finish off with Cardiff, Edinburgh, and one more I can't remember. So trying to do something different, no sales pitches, laid back networking for leadership. If you're interested in attending any of those events or you want to learn more, please do reach out. I know this should have been about you, William, but I had to do a little sales pitch at the end.
I'll see you in Manchester, Si. I'll see you.
Excellent. And again, I'm pointing in the wrong place. Let me move you. There we go. And for anyone who wants to join a community of nearly 4,000 cybersecurity professionals, just taking on a community director as of today, Precious, who's now going to be leading the charge on making it more engaging, more mentor sessions, and lots more things for people to do. So do please come along and join. Have an amazing day, William. Have an amazing day, everyone else. And we'll see you very soon.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.